Eliza looked anxiously at the framed photograph on the wall, unable to contain the emotional pain she felt as silent tears trickled down her cheeks. Her beloved husband, John, died in a terrible car accident half a year ago. That fateful night, he lost control of his car, which collided with a bridge support and fell into the river. The car was not found until 3 days later, but John's body was not there. Experts assumed that the body was carried away by the strong current of the river, but even after searching the bottom of the river within a radius of several tens of kilometers from the crash site, they could not find it. Eliza and John's marriage lasted 6 years and was full of love and understanding. Her youngest son, Emmanuel, was her pride and joy. Neighbors and some friends even envied the family, as the 6-year-old was incredibly smart for his age. More than anything else in the world, he loved to read and he already knew many classical music songs. The first thing he always did was discuss the book they had just read with his father, always wanting to know his opinion of it. Sitting in the kitchen with tears in her eyes, Eliza remembered the wonderful times before tragedy struck that family. The times when everything was fine and her life was planned for years to come. John was a successful businessman who won it all thanks to his extraordinary intellect and determination. The man's fortune was worth 6 figures, which automatically put him alongside some of the most successful people in New York. But after John's tragic death, it turns out that the money was taken from his bank accounts shortly before the horrific accident. Furthermore, the young entrepreneur did not just sell his business to his competitors. He also took out a high-interest loan from the bank. The most painful part for Eliza was that she didn't know anything about it. And now she couldn't believe her husband had left her and their son in such a precarious financial situation. "Why did you have to do that, John?" whispered the miserable widow to herself, crying silently so as not to wake her son. But the real trouble started a month earlier, when Eliza got a call from the bank. She was told that one of her loans was past due, and she needed to make an urgent payment. Of course, the widow didn't have that much money. So she was puzzled about how to get such an amount. The low-income woman was able to borrow some money from her parents and sell her vehicle, which was barely good enough to make the required down payment. One could only imagine how long it took the single mother with the small child in her hands to do this, once having left Emmanuel at home alone with one more book. So he went to the market to buy something for dinner, but 30 minutes later, the woman came home with a bag full of groceries and soon realized that something terrible had happened. The house was ransacked, which made her think that someone was looking for her. For something. However, the worst was yet to come. His son's room only had an empty blanket. The young mother called out in a trembling voice, "Emmanuel, son, where are you?" But all she got in response was complete silence, which was occasionally interrupted by the ticking of the clock on the wall. At that moment, the phone rang. Stumbling over all the things that were scattered on the floor, Eliza ran to answer the phone and was surprised to hear a flattering voice from an unknown person on the other end of the line. "Hi Eliza, you must be surprised to receive this call. Yours husband owes me a lot of money. 3 years have passed, and I still haven't heard from him, but I'm not used to losing my money, so your son will have to stay with me for the time being. Of course, until you return the full amount with interest," said the mobster on the other end of the line and hung up. Eliza was taken aback by the mystery man's question about where her husband had gone. She had already noticed that her husband had borrowed money from dangerous individuals who did not value human life. Determined to deal with the criminals, she went to the nearest police station and reported the whole situation. The officer on duty directed the worried woman to speak with Estevao, who worked in the Department for Combating Organized Crime. After listening to Eliza's confusing story, the officer reassured her and pledged to help her. Estevao vividly recalled the case involving John's mysterious death and was practically the only one in the department to believe that he might still be alive. Of course, no one listened to the young policeman at the time and considered his hypothesis to be a figment of his wild imagination. To help Eliza, he devised a scheme and carried out a special operation to capture the people who kidnapped little Emmanuel. Fortunately, everything went well and the boy was unharmed. Even without understanding what happened, Emmanuel considered it all an adventure, just like in one of his books. The arrested criminals were immediately taken into custody at the police station, as they were guilty of some crimes that could lead to several years in prison. Sadly, Emmanuel's rescue did nothing to shed light on the strange circumstances surrounding John's death. In the blink of an eye, 3 years have passed, and during that time, Eliza has paid off all her husband's debts and started a new journey. Although it was extremely challenging, the widow had no other option. Eliza kept in touch with Estevao, who remained in the department for combating organized crime. The two started going out together, and it was clear that their friendship could evolve into something more, opening up space for a possible love. Eliza decides to make one of Emmanuel's dreams come true and take him to see the ocean up close, so she plans to go to a resort in Miami for the holidays. Estevao offers to accompany them on an adventure, and the woman happily accepts. The news was given to his son, who replied, "Thanks Mom, I'm finally going to learn to surf," shouted Emmanuel happily. Emmanuel was very happy to have chosen one of the local airlines with Estevao. Estevao, Eliza and Emmanuel had a lot of fun in this paradise. The three of them bathed in the sea, played on the beach and enjoyed the city a lot. Before they knew it, the holiday was over, and it was time for them to head back to New York. Eliza was sitting in the economy class seat. Eliza relaxed and wanted to sleep. At this time Emmanuel approached her, touched her hand lightly, and said, "Mom, I saw Dad in front with a woman in business class," said the worried boy. And Eliza replied half sleepy, "And as you may have seen your dear father, you know that it is impossible for you to have seen him." The woman's heart began to beat faster at that time, but she didn't care much for what the boy said. Emmanuel kept insisting that it was really his father that he saw, and no one else. Eliza then asked her son to show her where her father was. To her surprise, Emmanuel confidently led her to the business class section, where John was seated next to a beautiful woman. Upon seeing his ex-wife and son, the man's face immediately changed and turned pale, so taking his lover by the hand, John tried to pretend that nothing was happening, but of course he was unsuccessful. "How am I supposed to understand this, John? Maybe you may have forgotten this, but you still have a wife and child, who have been mourning his death these years, and have been dealing with all the financial problems caused by his disappearance," Eliza said loudly and angrily. John tried to express some response to Eliza's accusations, but Estevao, who had just reached them, did not allow him to do so. "I will contact my colleagues in New York and Miami, Mr. John, to question you and have the I'm sure you won't get away with having committed such crimes against your wife," explained Estevao with a firm tone. When Estevao stopped talking, John's mask fell completely, and the man understood that his scam had been discovered, and that there was nowhere to run. And so they continued their journey. A while later, it was confirmed that John purposely staged his own death to run away with his lover to live a new happy life. The unfaithful husband used the loan money to buy a house on the beach and live like a luxurious businessman. Meanwhile, John never thought about the trauma he caused his wife and son. Fortunately, thanks to Emmanuel's vigilance and Estevao's help, as soon as arrived in New York, the cunning crook got what he deserved. Now he will answer for his crimes and pay for everything he caused in the lives of Emmanuel and Eliza, while the two and Estevao live a happy life without any secrets between them.